Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Due to the COVID-19 emergency, tonight's Committee of Adjustment hearing is being held by video conference and live stream video on the town's live stream webpage at oakville.ca. This is a hearing to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act. Please keep in mind that the intent of this process is to review the application that is before the committee, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. The process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, or organization. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the applicant or authorized agent must contact the Secretary Treasurer to schedule a new hearing date. In order to conduct an effective and efficient electronic hearing, we have adopted the following procedure. If you are watching the live stream of this hearing on oakville.ca and you wish to speak to an item on the agenda, you can call 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 905-815-6095. The phone number is also posted below the screen at the live stream page at oakville.ca. Staff will be standing by to take your call. And when you do call in, staff will take your name, an item number that you wish to address, and your telephone number. And then further instructions will be provided to you to call back and join the video conferencing. When the chair of the committee polls the interested parties, the Secretary Treasurer will unmute you when it is your time to speak. The applicant or agent will be given the opportunity to briefly explain to the committee the basis of the application and answer any questions that may arise. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for that presentation. The name and address will be recorded and submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. All delegations must also state their full name and address for the record, and a maximum of 5 minutes will be provided to each presentation. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chair. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. The applicant or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to respond to the comments made by interested parties and answer any questions from the committee members. If the applicant or agent has any concerns found in the staff report, particularly with any proposed conditions, this will be the opportunity to advise us. The matter will then be taken into committee for a decision, and this will mark the end of all discussions. Any person desiring a notice of the decision for an application must provide a written request, preferably through email, to the Secretary Treasurer. Please note that you must make a written request in order to be included on the list that is used by the Ontario Land Tribunal for the giving of any subsequent notice of any appeal. Written notice of the committee's decision will be mailed no later than 10 days for minor variance and 15 days for consent to the applicant, agent, and any other person who has filed such a written request for notice. If you do not agree with the committee's decision, you may appeal this to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and the last day to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal will be noted on the decision. If no appeal is received within the prescribed timeframe, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding, and the Secretary Treasurer will then notify the applicant and anyone who received a copy of the decision through written correspondence. People participating in this hearing are to be courteous to and respectful of the members of the committee, town staff, and other people participating in the electronic hearing. Tonight's electronic hearing is being video recorded and available for future viewing at oakville.ca. Thank you. Regrets this evening are Ms. Murray. Do I have any declaration of pecuniary interests? Okay, I see none. Thank you. At this time, I will take requests for deferral. Madam Secretary Treasurer, is there anyone standing by to request a deferral? Or is there anyone in the audience who is seeking to ask for a deferral?
Madam Chair, I haven't received any request for deferral. And however, you can repeat that if they want to defer the application, they can raise the hand.
Okay, very well. Any members in attendance at this time who are seeking to request a deferral, please raise your hand in order for you to be invited to speak. Okay, if we haven't received any deferrals, we have no consent applications. We'll proceed with the first item on our agenda tonight, which is CAV 165 of 2021. at 9 Ennis Clare Drive East. Again, it's CAV 165 of 2021 at 9 Ennis Clare Drive East. Who is the agent who's speaking on this agenda?
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Jason Heater, Hicks Design Studio, 295 Robinson Street, on behalf of our clients at 9 Ennis Clare.
Good evening, Mr. Heater. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, we're seeking,
just, you know what? I apologize. I don't mean to interrupt you. I just want to repeat the phone number for anyone who's interested to speak to this application. The phone number is 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions at that time. Sorry, Mr. Heater, go ahead.
That's okay. We're here tonight seeking 2 variances to the current bylaw for a renovation project that is currently underway. The property was subject to previous approvals back in 2019. The first variance relates to interior side yard to a single-story covered porch that's nearest the northern property line. Allowable setbacks 4.2 meters. We are seeking 3.77. which is in fact an improvement on the current existing legal setback, which is 3.03 meters. That setback's been in place for upwards of 60 years. Variance number 2 has to deal with the dwelling depth measured to the proposed single-story porch structure. We're seeking a dwelling depth of 34.83. There was a previous depth approval granted for this property for 30.83 meters back in 2019. So we're looking to increase 4 meters to add this single-story porch. If I could just go to slide 5, please, if possible. This is the rear, a quick little rear rendering. So we're talking about the element on the right-hand side here. The clients have undertaken a substantial renovation to this lakefront property, reusing the existing foundation from the original 1960s home to renovate the single-story dwelling. This home has remained in its current location for 60 years. We are not looking to expand the dwelling itself towards the lake whatsoever. We are proposing to add a 9-foot deep by 16-foot wide, single-story open-air covered porch structure that's located in the east corner of the dwelling, closest to the property at 15 Ennis Clare. The porch itself occupies less than 1/5 of the rear width of the elevation. Its furthest leading edge is set back behind an existing lakeside building on the property to the north. The porch is on the opposite side of the property from the neighbors at 3 Ennis Clare. The new porch will not create an overlook condition for either of the neighboring properties, nor does it create massing or scale issues given its single-story nature, which allows it to mesh seamlessly with the current bungalow design. It will certainly be in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. Privacy for all neighbors will not be affected given the location and design of the extension. It should also be noted that the proposed renovation actually improves overlook and privacy issues, given that the second floor has been removed off of what was the previous home. The new porch is extremely well concealed in the tree and hedge line from the property to the north and is not visible whatsoever for the property to the west, given the home is located 45 degrees askew from that site. It will not block or alter any lakefront vistas or lakefront views for either home. And I think you'll find letters of support in the file for the neighbor at 15 Ennis Clare who would be most closely affected by this, as well as planning support. We would recognize a receipt of a letter of objection for the neighbor at 3 Ennis Clare. There are several important details that should be clarified as they were slightly misrepresented in the note. The existing building on the site has not been demolished. The entire foundation was retained and the renovated bungalow is being constructed on the existing foundation, much to the detriment of our client. It has not been moved or extended closer to the lake whatsoever. The rear of the house, as you see it today, will be the rear of the house that was constructed in the 1960s. Massing and scale of the structure also remain consistent with the original bungalow that was on the site. The views from all neighboring properties will not be altered, and the same can be said for any shadowing concerns. Again, this is a single-story bungalow, and any shadows created would be extremely minimal to non-existent given the site context and the relationships of the homes to one another. The dwelling at number 3 Ennisclair is a skew of our site, and the new porch will not be in their sight line whatsoever, nor does it have any possible overlook into the rear yard. We would contend that the views from the dwelling at 3 Ennisclair have been altered more substantially by the large fence they have constructed all the way to the water line. This fence actually serves to further shield the view of the proposed porch. The only way to have possible sight line of this porch would be to make your way down to the water line and stand on the seawall. Conservation has reviewed and approved the current proposal as it relates to lakefront proximity and floodplain. I think you'll find the 2 variance requests certainly meet the 4 tests, will not negatively affect the neighboring properties, and certainly maintain the intent of the bylaw and neighborhood character.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Heather. Are there any questions of Mr. Heather at this time? Okay, I see none. If there's anyone in attendance who would like to speak to this application, please raise your hand and the Secretary Treasurer will invite you to speak. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in for this application?
Madam Secretary, Madam Chair, there is Mitch Goldstein. He wants to speak in regards to the application.
Okay.
Okay. Would I be able to share my screen? Is that possible?
I don't think so. It's possible because we need an advance. If you can send me by email, I could try to save on our website and do some.
Hold on one second. What is your email?
Jasmina, Jasmina .Radomiric, RADOMIROVIC, or you can send to COA request at Oakville.ca.
I have. So I've just sent you the PowerPoint. I can quickly introduce myself while you're receiving those. I'd like to thank Madam Chair. My name is Micah Goldstein. I'm a lawyer at Weir Folds. I act for David Weatherhead. He is the owner of 3 Ennisclair. He is the immediate neighbor to the southwest of the subject property. So we are requesting that the minor variance be denied. Alternatively, we would request a deferral, perhaps to give our client the opportunity to speak with the applicant regarding a potential compromise. And so I did have those slides to just help provide some visuals. And so that might assist in kind of reviewing some key aspects of this. So I've put in written submissions. I kind of want to focus on the issues of massing, scale, dwelling depth, and especially privacy. So this is not appropriate development. It is out of character with the neighborhood. And another preliminary point. So there was a 2019 variance that was granted, and now we have a 2021 variance. So these are incremental variances. This isn't how variances are supposed to be put forward in like a piecemeal fashion. You get kind of a death of 1,000 cuts here, where you don't really get the entire application considered at one time, which is proper. And so it seems like maybe not the entire application has been considered. Have the slides been received?
No, I haven't received anything yet.
Okay. Okay, it's well, I mean, I don't know if the committee has, they do have the drawings before them showing the lots, and I did provide my letter, and so those do show. I have red lines drawn on that their plan, and so just looking at that, if that is before the committee, we have from the 2019 application, we can see that the front of the property, that's already been extended significantly. And they're proposing an additional extension of the porch at the front. So obviously the depth is significantly increased, and it should be looked at from the standard in the zoning bylaw, which is 20 meters. Now it's increased by 75%. It's a significant extension. If we look at the buildings surrounding it in the neighborhood, there's just no building in that area with that kind of significant massing, depth, and scale. So that's a significant difference. It's out of character with the neighborhood. It's bad to begin with. Our client, he didn't live at the property in 2019. Had he at that time, he would have objected. Because it's so out of character with the neighborhood. So it's going from like 20 meters to 34.83. That's quite significant. And if you look at the drawing I did include in my letter, there's red lines showing just how far out it extends, like half the building extends beyond them. And so we're looking at getting into a further extension towards the lakeshore. And there's no other building around that has that kind of extension from the building itself. So that's inconsistent with the official plan, with the zoning bylaw. The intent of avoiding property sticking out that far is to avoid impacts to privacy. And so again, I was hoping, and I do have one, there is a drawing within the materials I provided within the letter I provided. And so if that could be looked at, if the committee has that in front of them. There's a picture of the owner's property. The slides aren't received yet, I guess, eh?
No, I haven't received.
Let me just see.
Oh, we have the letter in front of us. The one with the pictures and the drawing.
Okay. All right. So it does show that I've sent it. It would help to have those, but in any case, we can see. So if you look at the sheathing in that drawing, and you can see that there are windows at the rear of that sheathing. So those go about 9 feet high. And then if we extend out from the top of the sheathing furthest away, so this takes some imagination. It's unfortunate that and maybe I could even send the pictures, but it will peer out over the fence. So the building is at a high level. And then the ground tapers down as it goes towards the water. So if you have a structure such as that porch, which is standing level, it can see higher and higher and over that fence, right? The fence goes down also as it goes towards the water. And our client's property kind of fans out so that backyard is definitely visible. So, I mean, I do have pictures that my client has taken from their backyard area, and there's definitely an overlook that just wasn't there before. Like you're looking back, without that porch, there's windows facing the back. But here you have this back extension porch, and you can see in all directions. So they can see right into our client's backyard. That's just a fact. And you can see that from the pictures I have. Perhaps I can send them. So I would like the committee to consider that. That's a very significant impact. And then in terms of the neighbors, when we're talking about, and so that doesn't, like if we extend, they would extend further from there, right? the porch. So it would create an overlook. And then if we talk about the neighbors, so at 15 Ennis Clare, they are not actually significantly impacted. They're at a different level. They have sort of a lakeshore house that it's actually underground. So their privacy, and I do have a picture of it, and their privacy is not impacted. It wouldn't create an overlook for them like it does for our client. And then with one Ennis Clare that have given a letter in support, they're 2 houses over. And so the lakeshore sort of curves around. So they're not even facing that direction. So that privacy impact does not, they don't even see it, right? So that's kind of a very significant new thing when we're talking about whether a variance is minor or not. Is there an owner's impact on a neighboring property? That's huge. And this creates a new overlook right into their property. It's a loss of privacy, and it makes it not minor for that reason. And as well, again, just to conclude, it's not consistent with the official plan, the zoning bylaw, because it's just different from all the properties in the neighborhood that don't jut out that far, that don't have extensions into close to the water. And those go into, so far they go into the conservation area. So that just gives you an idea of how far they're going in. And we'd also submit that the Conservation Authority, maybe there's been a piecemeal consideration of this application. When the permits go to get updated, they should consider the entire property. So, we'd submit that it hasn't been considered properly because of the piecemeal fashion. It sets a bad precedent because other developers in the neighborhood are going to want to have to extend their properties close to the shoreline. It's not the proper thing to do. And so that would be my submission, that it doesn't meet the 4 tests and the application should be denied. Again, in the alternative, a deferral, so that perhaps some discussion can be had with the applicant and our client to perhaps work out some kind of accommodation. So those would be my submissions. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Goldstein. Are there any questions of Mr. Goldstein at this time? Mr. Talowski, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Goldstein, you seem to be arguing against the 2019 variance, not the one that's in front of the committee tonight. If I heard your presentation correctly, the concern is that the neighbor could now stand on their back porch, which isn't subject to a variance other than the covered porch addition, and look into your neighbor's property, which they could do with or without this variance. So I'm really struggling to understand what the impact of the variance that's in front of the committee today has on your client, not the variance that was granted 2 years ago.
Well, for one thing, they should be considered in context with each other because it's done in a piecemeal fashion, I would submit. It's not properly done. They should be considered together. An applicant shouldn't do multiple applications, but it increases the depth. The rear porch that is subject to the variance, as the depth of the building increases the depth.
To Madam Chair, I have received the slides. So if the slides,
Well, I think Mr. Goldstein, if you haven't covered everything in the slides, I'll permit you another minute. But I think we've already gone over the allotted 5-minute mark, and we've all read the letter and we've seen the pictures. Unless there's something else that you'd like to show that you haven't spoken about in your slides, by all means, you can direct the staff and they'll put it up.
Can we just look at the slides for a minute, just because it would help illustrate, I think. And perhaps just looking at the second slide, that would be cool. Yes, so that's just an illustration of the rear extension, the rear porch. So that would create an overlook. It's open here, that creates overlook. So that's just to help illustrate it. And if we just look at the next two slides really quickly, it shows the area of the backyard that they'll be able to see into. That's the area they can see into. And then the next slide, the client took a picture, kind of a view from the subject property. So I think that's a helpful illustration. And then if we go to the sixth slide really quick, that's the neighboring property. They just, yeah, 6. So they don't have, you see that lake house, it's below ground. So they don't have the same privacy issue. So that's a neat, unique issue for our client. So that's just what I wanted to illustrate.
Okay. Any other questions of Mr. Goldstein before I turn it over to Mr. Heather to answer all the concerns? Okay, I see none. Madam Secretary, there's no one else waiting to speak to the committee, correct?
Correct.
Okay, then go ahead, Mr. Heather. It's your turn to answer all of Mr. Goldstein's concerns.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Yeah, I just want to be very clear that again, this is a renovation project. There is no extension of the dwelling itself out the rear yard. This covered porch is on the exact opposite side to the neighbor at number 3 Ennisclair. So I would contend if you were to look at our slide 4 in our presentation there, that shows the sort of site context. In order to have the view that Mr. Goldstein showed really is just the natural native view out across the lake. That's not actually really into the backyard. It's down at the seawall itself. In order to get a view into the backyard in any of the public space of that property, you would be looking through our client's house, around a corner, which would be an impossibility. And it was well represented that really the only way to catch any sort of sight line of this porch is to, in fact, get yourself down to that waterfront edge and stand on that seawall. So the variances in 2019 dealt with additions for the garage out the front of the house. This home has been approved by conservation in its current location. There were no GFA related variances, no coverage related variances. So it certainly didn't represent an overbuild in the neighborhood whatsoever. And I think the location proves the best possible location for privacy related concerns for the house at number 3. It could not be farther away and it could not be tucked around the corner any further.
Any further comments before we take the matter into committee for discussion? Or any questions of Mr. Heather before we do so? Mr. Flemington, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering, Mr. Heater mentioned the slide that just shows the drawing of the porch overhang. The reason being,
I think staff said it's number 5. Do you want it up?
Yeah.
Perhaps staff can do that. It's Mr. Heather's presentation.
The only reason being is like, I just looked at the slide provided by Mr. Goldstein, and, you know, it was kind of showing a drawing of like, you know, perceived roof angle on that overhang. And I didn't view it to be the same as to what this photo shows, or this rendering shows. Like, to me, this rendering shows it to be a little more flat, with the exception of the skylights that are on it. So, like, you know, I guess in my opinion, I'm just sitting there thinking, like, this is like an overhang on a patio that is on the opposite side of the property than the resident that Mr. Goldstein's representing. And I could see that if there was some kind of concern that there was a second level to it or something. I think that, you know, maybe this kind of shows a better viewpoint of what that is, because I think that the space is a little further back in my opinion. So I don't know if there's the specifics on the measurements on the drawing of that, that, you know, the neighbor is unaware of. So I guess that's my question is, you know, was the neighbor aware that this is an overhang of a patio? You know, that to me, I don't find this being destructive to the privacy, even based on the photo or drawings that Ms. Goldstein put forth.
Yep, I see your point, Mr. Mr. Goldstein. I think the question is posed to you.
I see. So the depth, it's 2.78 meters, I believe. So that is the understanding of what it is. We have reviewed those drawings, and that so that is, I mean, we don't have the drawings. It's short notice, you know, time to prepare our own design drawings. But that is an approximation of what it is. So that's what we have to work with. But it does look like, just from the view that the client provided, that there will be an overlook created by that extension. So we're seeing the property here from this angle, and it looks modest from that angle, but then we're not seeing it from the perspective of my client's property, where it does overlook. So that's the issue. And it sticks out significantly to begin with. That's the consideration, right? So this is making a bad situation that much worse, and it pushes it over the edge, because you're now that much further at a higher level. Like this building is much higher than my client's property. So it does create an overlook. I mean, I do think the pictures show that.
So just as a follow-up, like, this is just like a overhang that is over top of a patio. So, and I think to my colleague, Mr. Tulowski's point, like, if this overhang is not permitted, those residences of this building will still be standing on that patio, viewing what it is that they're viewing. So I just don't understand what the negative impact is of this overhang on this patio from a privacy perspective.
It does extend the, like compared to the 2019, it does extend the rear of the property further in.
Yeah, but that 2019 is come and gone. Like, we're talking about this application that is before us now.
But it extends further than the 2019 drawings. Like looking at the 2019, they don't go as far in. This goes further in by 2.78 meters. That pushes it over.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, I see none. Let's take the matter into committee and have a discussion of our own. Who would like to start the ball rolling? Mr. Tulowski, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'll, as part of my motion, speak to the presentations made tonight. Madam Chair, I'm going to move this application be approved as applied for. I find that it does meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act. I do not see that the variances requested cause an impact. I would make that motion conditional on the addition being built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated August 23rd, 21, and that approval expire within 2 years if the building permit is not issued. Madam Chair, as I said in my earlier comment, and Mr. Flemington added to, I believe the objector is arguing the wrong variance. This is not the 2019 variance. And I do recall that file quite, and the dwelling depth is because of the garage that's extending out front. It's not because of the house extending into the rear yard. The dwelling meets the minimum rear yard setback. And the applicant at the time came up with the design to basically connect the houses on either side, which are at significantly different front yard setbacks. And by putting the garage out front, they mirrored the setback of the one side and mirrored the setback on the other side by having the face of the dwelling further back. That's what caused the variance for the depth, not the fact that it's extending further into the yard. It's permitted in the yard. And what's before us today is the porch addition. And I do not see how that addition has an impact to the neighbor. Mr. Goldstein's effectively arguing that somebody standing or sitting on an open patio is fine, but as soon as you put a roof over their head, that same person standing there or sitting there suddenly causes a significant overlook into the neighbor's yard. And I can't accept that argument. So as I said, Madam Chair, for those reasons I stated, I'm moving approval of the application.
Thank you, Mr. Sarowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Mary, very much for your time, committee members.
Thank you.
Good night. The next item on our agenda is CAV 166 of 2021 at 472 Brookside Drive. Again, it's CAV 166 of 2021 at 472 Brookside Drive. Who do we have here for this application? I have Miss Emily Villa. Oh, Mr. Wilmot, okay. Good evening. Anyone seeking to speak to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 905-815-6095. Go ahead, Mr. Wilmot.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is John Wilmot. I'm the architect and the agent for the application. The applicants are Mr. Michael Bowman and Heather Clark, and I am sure they're watching via the live stream this evening. As we do with all the minor variance applications, we approach the town planning staff and work with them to help understand and work through the design during our process. The result of this collaboration is that the staff have supported the variance requests. If we could go to slide, no, is that slide one? Perfect. Our client seeks to demolish the existing house on the property, then construct a single family residence and is seeking two variances to the bylaw. The first one is to prevent an increase in the residential floor area ratio from 41.72%, whereas 41 is the maximum. And the second one is to permit an increase in the lot coverage to 37.4%, whereas 35% is the maximum. If we could go to slide 3, please. This is a slide of our site statistics. I just wanted to point out, using the chart, that the actual house portion has a lot coverage of just over 29%. It's the covered porches at the front and the larger covered porch at the back that essentially kick the coverage over the maximum. These are, again, open areas with roofs, of course. And our submission that is that the extra lot coverage is due to this covered area, and it's mainly at the back, which is not causing any negative impact to the neighbor. So our submission is that all of the variances are minor in nature and collectively meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act. We are aware of our neighbor did reach out, or sorry, our client did reach out to the neighbors, and he canvassed quite a few of them. He spoke to quite a few. While no one signed letters in support, the design was well received, and most of the residents had no objection. There was one neighbor at 486 Brookside, a few doors down, who did not seem to object to the variance request, but had concern about the removal of a tree or trees. Our proposal does not contemplate the removal of both trees, just one, and that's to accommodate a pool. As the committee is well aware, all the development applications to tree protection, and this application will be no different. We can just go back to slide 1, please. Thank you. We just this afternoon heard of a concern from the fire department, and after speaking to my client, they helped me understand their plan, and the concern was access to the rear yard. And if you see on the site plan, there's a green hedge that's existing, shown up against either side. That was sort of a remnant of the original house, and effectively along those sides, those hedges will be removed to get that access, and there will be fencing and whatnot to replace it, but those hedges probably won't survive remove for access and drainage pattern. So that should solve the question of the fire department. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. That ends my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, any questions of Mr. Wilmot at this time? Okay, I see none. Ms. Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in requesting to speak to this application, or if there's anyone online that is waiting to speak to this application?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, very well. My only question to Mr. Wilmot was going to be about the fire hazard note that we got this evening. So if there are no further questions, we're ready to take the matter into committee. Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit, having reviewed the materials, and having heard the submissions from Mr. Wilmot, specifically with respect to the response to the fire issue, I'm satisfied that the requested variance conforms to the test of the Act. I'll put forward motion of approval, subject to 2 conditions, those being that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated September 21st, 2021, and that the approval expires within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you. We'll see you shortly.
Good. Oh, yes. Application CAV 167 of 2021 at 393 Dahlia Trail. Again, it's application CAV 167 of 2021 at 393 Dahlia Trail. Anyone seeking to speak to this application can call 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 905-815-6095. Staff is standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Tanveer Rai, and I'm representing the owners applicant at 393 Dahlia Trail. Our address, sorry, I forgot to mention my address. It's 2131 Williams Parkway Drive in Brampton, Ontario.
Very well. Go ahead, Mr. Roy.
Thank you. So a little bit background of this, about this project. We are trying to create a second dwelling unit in the basement, for which we are proposing a below-grade entrance in the rear yard. Now, we consider this file to be minor in nature just because of the fact that this setback requirement for the below-grade entrance is short by 8 inches. The requirement for the setback is 5.5 meter, whereas the proposed below-grade entrance are showing the setbacks of 5.3 meters. The proposed entrance itself is completely inside the fences. It's a corner lot, but the below-grade entrance is completely inside the fence, so it's not disturbing the neighborhood's character in any manner. So based on just the 8 inches factor, we consider it to be minor in nature, and we hope that the committee will give us the approval based on that fact. Thank you.
Very well, thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Roy at this time? Okay, I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, if there's no one waiting to speak to this application, we can take the matter into committee.
There is nobody, Madam Chair.
Okay, who would like to move a motion? Mr. Flemington, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the applicant's written application as well as the town's written staff report, which I do note is in support of the application. Also taking into consideration the applicant's agent's presentation this evening, noting that there were no oral or written objections to the application. I am prepared to make a motion in support of the application, finding that it's minor in nature and does meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act. I'd like to include the following 2 conditions. One, that the access stair be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated 09/10/21. And 2, that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Flemington. Is there discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you so much.
Have a good evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Application CAV 168 of 2021 at 542 Warminster Drive. Again, it's application CAV 168 of 2021 at 542 Warminster Drive.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Mr. Carosa. If anyone is here to speak to application CAV 168 of 2021 at 452 Warminster Drive, please call 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your calls. Go ahead, Mr. Carosa.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Members of the committee, Ms. Mark Carosa from Care Design. I'm the authorized agent on behalf of the property owners at 542 Warminster Drive. We're seeking relief from 2 zoning bylaws. The first one being garage area, where it's maximum allowed to go is 55 square meters. And we are proposing a garage area of 47 square meters. And the next variance we're applying for is an RFA, whereas 41% is allowed. And we're proposing a 43.6%, which is only about 18 square meters over. Slide 1, you can see there the overage of the garage is basically located at the back, where it's going to be used for seasonal storage. Variance number 2, the RFA, it's basically client's wish list where they wanted the breakfast area towards the back where we can have a nice view, and that's about 5.5 square meters. And then they wanted to have a pantry and servery combination, which is about 6.5 square meters. We can please move to the next slide, please. And in addition to the overage on the main floor, the client also wanted to have a separate laundry room as opposed to lining it with the mudroom on the main floor. So this is about 6 square meters. The total would be about 18 square meters. On to the next slide, please. So here's the front elevation. We designed it this way so that the overage from both the RFA and the garage basically can be seen from the streetscape. We designed the roof as such so that we were able to break up the massing of the second floor, essentially making it look like a 1.5-story dwelling from the front. In addition to the planning department supporting our application, I visited the neighbors, direct neighbors beside this property and across the street, and I was able to explain to them that we were applying for variance at this property, and they did not seem to have an objection, and I didn't receive any phone calls regarding this application. And that concludes my presentation.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Carosa. Are there any questions at this time? See none. Madam Secretary, if there is no one who's called in or anyone waiting to speak to this application, we can take the matter into committee.
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Talowski, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'll move this application be approved as applied for and that it meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. I would note that there was no submissions from the neighborhood on this file, and I find that the applicant has designed the dwelling in such a way that the massing is centered towards the middle of the dwelling as opposed to having any significant impacts to the street or the neighbors. I would make that approval subject to the dwelling being built in general accordance with the site plan and elevation drawings dated September 8th, 2021, and that a building permit issue within 2 years.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Talowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, application has been approved, none opposed. Good evening. We have application CAV 169 at 296 Riverside Drive. Again, it's application CAV 169 of 2021 at 296 Riverside Drive. If you're interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095 and staff will be standing by to take your call. Go ahead, Mr. Wilmot.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to go to slide 4 to start, please. Freezing frames and lack of audio, and I don't know if it's at my end or yours, so you can.
We see the front door rendering. I'm not sure if what you see.
Yeah, that's good. Just the video and audio has been cutting in and out a little bit tonight. So
I think that's on your end.
okay. All right. Thank you. So Mr. and Mrs. Hassan are the owners, and they're watching from home this evening. After working with town planning staff throughout the design process, we're pleased to see that they supported our variance request. If we can now go to slide 1, please. There we go. The request tonight is increase in the residential floor area ratio to 41%, whereas 39% is the maximum permitted. The magnitude of this variance is 191 square feet over what is permitted. And to put that into context, this means the house is just over 2 feet longer than a house that could be constructed as of right. And that's not a dwelling depth concern. It's just the magnitude over 2 floors of what additional volume of the design that helped mitigate this extra space. First of all, the lot coverage is only 31.8%, significantly less than the 35% that is permitted. The side yard setbacks for most of the rear, and you see that on this drawing, are greater than what is allowed, which is only 1.2 meters. And we have very roof configurations that help to break up the visual massing of the house. Our submission is that this variance request is minor in nature and it meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. Our client slide number 2, please. This is a diagram just showing who was circulated on the application. The green dots are neighbors who either supported verbally or with letters of support. The red dots are residents who voiced a concern and sent a letter of, well, not all objection, but letters of concern. My client did go out and reach out to all of these neighbors, had good conversations with them. We found out that through that process that most of the concern was related not so much to the design that was generally supported, but with the potential for cooling water in the backyard. And we've learned that that has been a challenge since some other houses were built. I did reach out to Mr. Chauvin, who is the northerly neighbor, and I had a chat with him about his concerns. I did explain to him, as the committee is aware, that all new development applications go through the development engineering department through the DESP approval process, where all the grading is designed by a land surveyor, Ontario land surveyor, certified. Or an engineer, and it will be a requirement that drainage design be inspected by the town once complete. So I think all of the residents were happy to hear that. We're aware that Mr. Chauvin had also another concern regarding the effect of the new house on his solar roof panels, and that prompted us to quickly put together a solar study. And if we could go to slide 10, please. Okay, so that might be a little hard to see. I know the committee probably has just gotten this because we were just made aware of it and we're able to submit it today. While this is not an exhaustive study, we put together a 3D model diagram showing the sun shading effect on Mr. Chauvin's roof. Maybe it would be best if we focused on, I'm going to change the way I was going to present this a little bit so we could see it a little bit better. If we could focus in on the top 4 images, that would be ideal. We created studies for the shortest day of the year, being December 21st at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And the longest day of the year, which will be on the lower half in a minute. column on the left hand, the diagrams on the left hand side is the design as we've presented it and as we proposed it. You can see at 10 a.m. In the morning, there is definitely a shadow. And that's on the longest day of the year. It shadows the long roof in the right side of Mr. Chauvin's house. And but those solar panels are not really designed, it appears, to capture the easterly light. Those are to capture the southerly and more westerly light. But as you get to 2 p.m. and probably by midday, a lot of those panels are exposed. Okay, and if I'd like to go down to the bottom of the page to show how the effect is on the at the longest day of the year. And at 10 o'clock in the morning, it is almost completely exposed. The solar panels are doing their job. And of course, by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, there's no shadow whatsoever. So we didn't want to stop there. We wanted to see what the effect of a as of right design would have on the shadows of our design. And again, if you could just go to the top 4, please. Thank you. If you can zoom in just a little bit more, you can see that there's really a negligible change between the as of right. And what we did there was we took that house and pushed it back the 2 feet that I talked about earlier. And we can see that an as of right design would cast the same kind of shadows. And really, we concluded that although in the morning on some of the longest days of the year, there would cast some shadows, the rest of the year, there would be very minimal effect on these solar panels. And just to complete it, you can go to the bottom half and see what the rest of the day, the rest of the year would look like. So at 10 o'clock and 2. So by that, I think that what we learned there, we submit that the design that as presented will cause very little shading for most of the year. And there wouldn't be any adverse impact of having an additional floor area versus a compliant design relative to the shadowing of these solar panels. So with that, I'm happy to end now. My 5 minutes, I'm sure, is up, and I'd be happy to answer some questions if you like.
Madam Chair, you are muted.
You are on mute, Madam Chair.
Apologize. I was asking if anyone had any questions of Mr. Wilmot at this time.
I do.
Okay. No, from the members of the committee. I see none. Okay, Madam Secretary, we do have people who would like to speak to this application. I'm showing an Albert Arcari. Is that correct? Do we have anyone else standing in line to speak to this application?
Correct. And also Jean-Pierre Chauvin. And if you can repeat again, whoever wants to speak in attendance, they need to raise their hand.
Okay. If anyone is in attendance for the meeting this evening, we see you, Mr. Chauvin. We will call on you shortly. Just bear with us for a second. And would like to speak to this application, please do call in at 905-815-6095, or simply raise your hand if you're already in attendance. Who raised their hand first? I'm happy to take either party. I have no preference.
Okay, my name is, as it shows, Albert Arcari. I am very concerned with the drainage problems I've had with my property. The house directly north of me is a 2-story house, much the same as the one that's here. It's increased the amount of water in my backyard substantially after every rain. You can see that when it rains, the east troughs don't, it pours over the side of the house between my house and his house there, like a little bit of Niagara Falls. And it flows, and it eventually flows down into my backyard. I look at the size of this house. The house that was built on that property originally was around 1,200 square feet. Now we've gone to 3,700 square feet. That's almost 3 times the size. That's going to increase the amount of, that's decreasing the amount of soil and grass and all that that can absorb moisture. Fine, that's going to cause more problems. I look at also, not only have you have you had a bylaw of a house should be set at 39%. Now all of a sudden you want to increase it to 41%. What's the use of having these variances if they're going to just can very easily be set aside by a thing like this? When I built my house, I went with my contractor and with my architect, and we looked, and I said, what will fit into this? I wanted to fit my house into the neighborhood. I went around with the plan of my house. I didn't want to change the genre of the neighborhood. This house has changed it dramatically as the one that's north of me. The one north of me is cut sunlight out of my, it's cut sunlight coming into my windows. The one south of me, south of Mr. Chauvin, is probably going to do the same for him. Now, I am sure that the town did a lot of study and saying this is going to be the maximum, where it's going to be 39%. And all of a sudden we get people saying we're going to have 41%. Further up the street, about 6 houses up the street from me, there's another house that's even been built bigger. Now, what's the use of having all these bylaws if you're going to just change it? Somebody can come in and just say, change it. No, I disagree with that. I look at the way the weather is changing. We have all this climate change. Maybe houses should be made, houses going on the property should be smaller, not bigger, so we don't have all this flooding going on. So that is my concern. Also, I see I look at the driveway at the front. It goes over the drainage where the ditch drains. It's sort of in the middle of the driveway. Now that ditch has always been bad drainage, and it's going to increase. I don't know what's going to happen with this when this thing's sort of stuck in the middle of the driveway. So those are my concerns. Now,
Thank you, Mr. Arcari, for your submission.
You're welcome. And thank you, Madam Chair.
I do sympathize. It's not easy whenever there's new construction and the things that come along with it, but I'm sure Mr. Wilmot will reiterate this. The reason that the Committee of Adjustment exists is to really discuss minor variances. Now it's up to us whether this variance is minor in nature, and we do have the force tests to measure it at. If we stuck to exactly what the bylaw said, then we wouldn't have this committee. It would be so much easier, but there are circumstances where these variances are requested, and that's our job, is to assess whether this request is reasonable or not. And with respect to the construction and development engineering site plan process, those will deal with the drainage, the flooding, all the issues that you are speaking of have to be looked at with any new development. And I assure you the town does take a good look, look at them. In terms of the building, the massing of the homes, 2-story is as of right, and Mr. Wilmot can defend the increase that he's requesting for his client. But it's inevitable that you will have areas of transition where there are 2-story homes that will be different than a 1-story bungalow or 1.5. And this is not a situation that can be mitigated in any way. It's as of right, and the owner of the property has the right to erect 2-story homes. That's my comment to your comments. I want to assure you that we're not just letting it be, and not any request that comes before us is approved. There are processes and tests that we have to abide by. I will have Mr. Wilmot answer all of the concerns from all the parties at one time. So I hope you're taking notes, Mr. Wilmot. Now I'll turn the mic over to Mr. Chauvin, and he's welcome to iterate his concerns. And I anticipate that they are along the same lines from the letters that we've received, but I will not cut into your time. Go ahead, Mr. Chauvin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And can you hear me just fine?
Yes, we can hear you just fine and see you fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I would like to say that, we fully understand that there's a new owner that bought a property right next to us, and they want to build a home that they want to live in and be comfortable with. That's fine. I have no concerns with that. However, I think what we're wanting to do is to raise the concerns of how does this new home or build impact our property and our living in our home next door. And, I have installed solar panels on the roof of our house because we're concerned with climate change. And we're concerned, and we want to make sure that we do our share. Okay? We installed them 12 years ago, and they've been producing ever since. And the power from those solar panels comes from any sunlight, whether it comes from the side, from the front. As soon as it has sun, it produces power. And I can show you that according to, even in a cloudy period, we will get a certain amount of power. The picture I sent to the committee was taken yesterday, and it showed that half of our house is shaded by the current bungalow. And today is November 8th, not December 21st. So we will be impacted by this 2-story house as far as power for mornings for a long period of time. It's not just one day or a couple of days, it's months. Okay, so I want that to be well understood. Having said that, we've raised the issue of drainage. Drainage is a big issue for us. I'm not going to dwell on it, but the bigger the house, the less the water can be absorbed by the ground. And what we've seen with other bills is that the water has been redirected in such a way that it's impacting neighbors. And I think that that is something that we're very concerned about. As far as the solar panels, I think that at the very least, what could be done is to decrease the peak in the back of that house that's facing us, and having that slope towards the front so that at least we're minimized with the height, that's the peak that's going right against us. And if you take a look at the elevation that's looking towards us, What I'm talking about is the back peak. So you take a look at John's, there is two peaks, one with showing with windows and another one that doesn't show windows. And what I'm kind of saying is if we could keep the roof line angled, maybe we would be less impacted for as much of a period of time than if it was the way it is. So that's my concern. This is saying, okay, it's very fine to say it's their right to build a two-story home, but you know, they can maybe mitigate some of the concerns.
Have you had this discussion with Mr. Wilmot or the new owner?
I spoke with Mr. Wilmot both about the water and the solar panels and the impact on this. I did not come up with this solution at that time because we never had that chance of a discussion. I mean, the only discussion I had with John was he indicated to me the solar panels are not impacted, is what he told me. Well, they are impacted. And that's why I sent the picture yesterday showing the shadowing of the existing house, not 2 stories plus the roof that impacts the solar panel. Okay, so that's the point that I'm kind of making, is that, you know, I think that if we could take a look at seeing what can be done to minimize the impact, I would appreciate.
Understood. Let me see if the members have any questions of yourself or Mr. Akari at this time. Are there any questions, members? Okay, I see none. Go ahead, Mr. Romat, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll maybe address Mr. Akari first, which I understand that they've had some significant water issues, and we as the architect have not addressed, you know, obviously what's happened to them. We're only in control of what we can control within the site of our project. And when you look at drainage and hard surface, this is why the town probably mandated a lesser lot coverage back in their old bylaw. And as I stated in our presentation, that despite the extra floor area, we have quite a significantly less surface area or lot coverage for this design. So I think whereas there's a concern for more, yes, there is definitely more floor area and more coverage than what is existing. Of course, it is significantly, at least 10% less than what it actually could be from a coverage point of view. And the coverage is a more important concern when it comes to water drainage. Obviously, less surface area of grass area and whatnot. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that, as I stated in the onset, is we have, and the town is makes it very challenging for us for sure. But we have engineers that design things like dry wells, catch basins, drainage patterns, swales, and whatnot to control the water on site. So while we do absolutely take all the residents' concerns seriously, hopefully they have some comfort in knowing that there will be a significant drainage design and water control design for the property. With respect to the solar panel issue, again, I identified a few different mitigating factors. One, first of all, I took the time and we spent a good part of 2 days generating these sun angles. And while they're not perfect, I understand that because there are diagrams and we made assumptions. I think they do tell the story of how, you know, while there will be some minor impact to the solar panels, much of the year and most of the day will still allow for that to function properly. I also wanted to point out again that some of the mitigating factors we did, and when I designed it, knowing that there was existing setbacks with the current house, I did choose to, because it's on, the new house is on the south side, I wanted to bring the house towards the south so that it would let more light into Mr. Chauvin's property. That by doing so, it did allow us to create a two-story house that would be very similar and have, you know, no more negative effect than a house that would be as of right. The height is not excessive. It does not need a variance. It is permitted. The roof lines, I know the gable at the one side, there's sort of two parts of that, because if you turn the gable a different way, it would impact the solar panels in a different way. So as much as it may help a tiny bit, it's not maybe the effect that Mr. Chauvin thinks it would be. We did look at those things. Anyway, I hope that answers his questions. He may not be completely satisfied, but I think from the design point of view, the actual variance from a planning point of view that we're requesting is truly minor. It is not going to make any significant negative impact on the neighbor. And with that, I'll open it up to more questions.
Very well. Questions or items of clarification from the members? Mr. Talowski, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Wilmot, just want to circle back to the comment you just made that if you took a look at the request that the neighbors made about instead of that gable going straight up, actually sloping it back, I think I heard you say it could have a negative impact on his solar panel if you sloped it back. Can you explain that to me, please?
So I didn't mean to misrepresent. It just changes the angle. So if I mean, you have to have a sloping roof. You know, for proper design aesthetics and whatnot. If you change the angle from facing the gable facing the north and then changed it to facing the south, you know, so 90 degrees, it would still have an effect. And it's not necessarily that gable that is creating all the sun angles. Hard to explain, but we did try and figure out what that impact would be, and so it was negligible. It just changed sort of the time of day that it would affect it, and it wasn't for very long. The reality is the sun comes up in the east and goes past the house, you know, by mid-morning. So it's hard to really explain without a significant diagram.
But I believe you said in your presentation that the impact of the extra square footage was that the house was just a couple of feet longer than it otherwise would be.
Yes.
So, and I understand the neighbor's point. You could argue that the impact of the variance is less light, perhaps negligible, but less light onto his solar panels. And I'm just questioning whether his request to look at one gable is that onerous a request. And whether, with that in mind, the committee may consider, perhaps approving the variance, but making the elevation subject to the director's approval, and to provide an opportunity for you and the neighbor to address his concern. And I say that because I'm drawing a direct link between what his concern is and the fact that the variance is making the house deeper. And I'm not sure that his request is really that onerous.
The extra 2 feet, I think I demonstrated, is not a significant, makes a significant impact over what is as of right, is my point. We did the study. There's not, the extra 2 feet that allows the interior of the home to work and function as desired is not going to change the impact on the solar panels by any significant amount, is my point. The gable, we did look at it, and again, we found the same thing. It's not going to make a significant impact on the shadowing of the solar panels. We did look at that. I asked our staff to go and look at that, and that's what we concluded. I can't provide an exhaustive set of drawings to show the committee, especially in a short period of time, but I think we're comfortable with the design and comfortable that it works properly. So.
I have a question of Mr. Chauvin. You provided pictures of the shadowing yesterday. Yes. So since you've put up the solar panels, how has the existing home affected your output? Has it been functionable, or?
The existing home function, it has not impacted the solar panels whatsoever.
Despite the shadowing that you presented?
The shadowing, if you notice, is just on the side of the house. And if you look at that picture, you can see that half of the side of the house is under sun, and the rest is shadow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. So
okay, so you can see where the shadow is along the wall of the side of that. The solar panels are higher than that, so they're not shadowed at this point. However, if you take a look at that same picture and now add the story plus the additional height of the roof, you're looking at 3 times the height. So everything is shadowed. And that shadowing is occurring in November. It's not occurring in December. So it's very fine to say that John has done a study. I don't know how he's done the study. He's had this information very short amount of time, and he's come up with some type of study. But I can tell you that the facts are the house that is being designed will shadow my property and will shadow the solar panels in the morning, in the fall, for sure, and for a significant period of time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions or comments or items of clarification before we take the matter into committee? Okay, who would like to start the ball rolling? Mr. Talowski, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, you see from my earlier comments that I do have some concerns. I can appreciate the neighbors' comments, and I am potentially linking the variance, the impact of the variance directly to that concern. I don't believe it's a concern that warrants the application being denied, but I also don't think it should be approved without an honest effort to try to, alleviate some of that concern. And I don't think having a look at it impacts the variance being requested. I think it's just a design issue. I'm not as concerned about the comments being made with respect to the water. And I say that from experience. The town is definitely taking a far greater position on drainage and runoff. When I built my house 12 years ago, it was all done with grading. When my neighbor built their house a few years ago, there's rear yard catch basins to address the very issue that the neighbors here are raising. And I suspect something that the town, through the development engineering site plan process, would look at. So, Madam Chair, I'm going to, similar to my comments earlier, I'm going to move approval of the application. But with the conditions that it be built in general accordance with elevations as approved by the Director of Planning, and that a permit issue within 2 years. And it's my hope that Mr. Wilmot and the neighbor will sit down and try to look at improving the situation with respect to the impact to the solar panels that's been discussed tonight. And with that stipulation, I find that the application will meet the test of the Planning Act.
Very well. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, subject to those conditions, and none opposed.
Madam Chair, I would like to, sorry, to Madam Chair, I need the questions that Mr. Talowski approved the first condition, although he didn't tie it with the submitted site plan. Is there any date on the site plan?
No, there's only elevation drawings dated September 28th, 2021. Mr. Talowski, is the site plan the same date?
Actually,
yes, Mr. Wilmot? Okay, so it's the same date for the site plan, but it's subject to the Director of Planning's approval.
Both of them, site plan and elevation drawings, correct?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Hopefully this will mitigate all the neighbors' concerns. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Okay, moving on to application CAV 170 of 2021 at 38 Birch Hill Lane. Again, it's application CAV 170 of 2021 at 38 Birch Hill Lane. Who do we have here representing the client?
Good evening, Madam Chair, Arlene Beaumont, Outred and Associates. I am here this evening representing the owners of 38 Birch Hill Lane. We're here tonight to request 2 variances related to construction of a second-story addition over the existing garage. That garage was built back in about 2006 and there were variances that were approved at that time for the garage. But because we're adding a second story, we're here this evening, we have to revisit some of those variances. And so we're back again to request a variance for dwelling depth of 33.08 meters, and that's to the front of that existing garage. Although the garage is detached from the dwelling, there is an existing covered breezeway between the house and the garage, which creates a connection and thereby necessitates a variance to legalize the dwelling depth, which is an existing condition. And the second variance we require is for interior side yard setback of 2.47 meters, again, to the existing garage. The homeowners have had discussions with both neighbors, especially the one that is most impacted, and they're fine with the proposal to build the second story additional in the garage. I also want to note that staff have made a comment regarding an existing shed in the front yard. If you could just take the, I don't know if you can show, just zoom out a little bit on the, yes, thank you. Oh, sorry, site plan application. Yes, there's an existing shed. It's been there for many years. But because it also requires variances and we don't want to defer this evening, my clients have agreed to take that shed down. So I'm happy to answer any questions. As I said, the neighbors are in support as our staff.
Thank you, Ms. Beaumont. Are there any questions of Ms. Beaumont at this time? Or items of clarification? I see none. Who's ready to move a motion? Oh, I'm jumping the gun. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to application CAV 170 of 2021 at 38 Birch Hill Lane? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, if there's none, then I'll take a motion. Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit, reviewed the materials for the submissions of the applicant, and reviewed the written staff report, I'm satisfied that the requested variances conform to the test of the Act. This is an interesting enclave, and knowing that the adjacent property owners are satisfied with it, and note that there will be minimal impact from the variances that are being sought. I'll put forward this motion of approval, subject to two conditions, those being that the addition be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning, and elevation drawings dated 06/02/21, and that the approval expires within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? The application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Have a good night. Application CAV 171 of 2021 at 348 Maplehurst Avenue. Again, it's CAV 171 of 2021 at 348 Maplehurst Avenue. Anyone who's interested in speaking to this application can call 905-815-6095. Go ahead, Mr. Kobasenko.
Good evening, Madam Chair and committee members. Thank you very much for having us here this evening. I'll try to keep this presentation brief as it's already getting late in the evening. Our project is at 348 Maplehurst Avenue. We are seeking 3 variances. Second slide, please. So the 3 variances that we're asking is a increase in garage floor area from 49.5 meters square, which is a typical 2-car garage, to 56.77 meters, which is a tandem garage, so third parking spot, which is interior of the garage with basically no impact to the outside of the home. The second increase is in the residential floor area from 37% to 38.5%, which is mitigated by massing different roof lines, stepping of the dwelling at their side yards, at the rear, and just varying up the massing in general. And the last one is an increase in the lot coverage area from 25 to 28.3%, which at face value seems significant, but what's pushing over those numbers is an underground basement extension, which is underneath an open porch. So it really, a big portion of that increase is from below grade construction, which has no bearing on the massing of the home. Next slide, please. This is just the existing bungalow on the street. If we can jump to slide 10 for a moment, I just want to illustrate one point in relationship to the context of this development. Just down the street, across the road on Maplehurst, there are several developments, newer homes and additions, which are 3-story in nature, 2 full stories plus an attic. And so our clients have felt all along that the character of the street really is getting impacted by these very large 3-story homes. And initially we were hoping for a little bit more allowable square footage and so forth, but we worked with town staff to bring the application down to what it is today. So if we can go back to slide number 3, or sorry, number 4, I guess, which is the site plan drawing. So we did go back and forth with town staff, with Catherine Buckerfield and Brandon Hassan, probably 3 or 4 times through the design process, received various comments, addressed the design, addressed the concerns, and arrived at the proposed design, which we have today, which I believe is supported by town staff. We've also looked very closely at the design guidelines for stable residential communities. And again, we've tried to mitigate the impacts of this new home on the street. A couple of things I'll just mention here on the side. So we're not affecting any of the side yards. That basement walkout with the open deck is where there is an underground basement extension, which houses just a little bit more basement space, which is a home gym there. And then we have a covered porch, which was one of our strategies for mitigating the massing, bringing down the massing in the back of the home and varying some roof lines. So those 2 elements are really what make up that additional lot coverage that we're seeking. In the report, I did notice that was sent to us on Friday. There's a couple of comments in there, not related to the variances that are being sought today, but related to a slight encroachment of the front porch across the front setback. That's just a technical error on the drawing, on the floor plans that is corrected. So that's not a concern. We'll align that moving forward with the application. And the second comment that I saw there was related to the circular driveway and the spacing in between the 2 entrance points. Again, we're gonna, we don't believe we need a variance for that, so we're not seeking for it. We'll just work with the zoning bylaw as is and do our best to comply with it without seeking any variances. So those things are fine in terms of moving forward. Next slide, please. Just the floor plan of the basement, which just want to illustrate that gym area towards the back of the house. That's the area which is underground, and there is no construction above other than an open porch. That's what's bringing a good chunk of the lot coverage over the allowable. Next slide, please. And then on the main floor, again, you'll see the open porch and the covered porch, and then a little breakfast nook which sticks out, which kind of vary the back elevations of the dwelling to create a little bit of variances in the roof lines. Next slide, please. On the second floor, we've managed to step back the rear of the house at the 2 bedrooms and create roof lines, again, which mitigate that rear massing and make this house more respectful and more proportionate to the 2 bungalows which are still in existence next to us. So that does reduce that overall massing of the home. And then next slide, please. And just looking at the elevations, you'll see how we've done that through the various roof lines, bringing down the covered porch in the front, down to a single level, bringing down the roof of the garage down to first floor level, having various dormers, and then as the house wraps around, those roof lines continue to kind of be staggered and to reduce the overall massing of the home. Next slide, please. Just the rear elevation, which shows similar attempts made to mitigate the massing. So with that, that concludes my presentation. I believe we've met the 4 tests of the Planning Act, and these variances are minor in nature, and we ask kindly for your approval. Thank you very much.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Kobasenko. Any questions or items of clarification? Okay, I see none. If no one has called in and is standing by to speak to this application, I'll take a motion. Go ahead, Mr. Flemington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the applicant for the presentation this evening. Noting that the town's written staff report was in favor of the motion, and noting all of the areas that the applicant can reduce in the massing. Also noting that I find that it's minor in nature and does meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act. There were no comments that were received, written or oral, in opposition of the application. So I am prepared to move the motion that it be approved, as mentioned. I would like to say that there are some conditions attached to my motion to approve. The first one being that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning and Elevation drawings dated September 13th, 2021. And 2, that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Very well. Thank you. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay. Application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Application CAV 105 of 2021 at 346 Willis Drive. It's deferred from July the 13th of 2021. Again, it's application CAV 105 of 2021 at 346 Willis Drive. Hello again, Miss Beaumont.
Thank you very much. Arlene Beaumont, Outfit and Associates. We are the agents for the owners of 346 Willis Drive. As you noted, Madam Chair, we were here in July and we requested deferral of the application at that time to allow us some time to address staff comments, in particular concerns related to the location of the driveway being too close to the intersection of Willis and Twiddle. So the proposal has now been revised, and I want to stress that the footprint of the home is exactly the same. The only change is that we've reoriented the home on the lot. The front of the home will now face Willis Avenue. This change means that we've been able to move that driveway further away from the intersection, which does address staff's concerns, and it does eliminate one of the variances. However, the reorientation exercise has actually means that we now have 3 new variances that we didn't have previously. The 2 variances that remain the same are for coverage and garage area. They're precisely what you saw back in July. I would like to note that the variance for lot coverage is related to the covered front porch and the covered rear patio. The house itself has a coverage of 23.9%. That front porch and the rear patio add another 2.2% to bring us just over 26% in coverage. The new variances that we need include a variance to deem Willis Avenue as the front lot line. This actually makes a lot of sense since the house will now be facing onto Willis. We also need a new variance for rear yard setback. the rear yard setback that we're proposing is actually to an uncovered rear porch. The setback to the dwelling itself does meet the bylaw. It's slightly over 8 meters. So it does meet the bylaw, but the uncovered rear porch does not. I'd also like to say, and as you can see from that site plan, that this is not a rectangular shaped lot. We have depth on one side of 37.59 meters and depth on the other side of 29.66. So that rear lot line does slant considerably towards the front lot line on the west side of the lot, and that's creating the variance situation. Finally, we are also requesting a variance for front yard setback of 9 meters, whereas 10.3 meters are required. Again, this home has been sited a little bit forward on the lot to allow us to have more room in the rear yard and to respect the appropriate distance to the actual building of 8 meters. And again, it's related to the odd shape of the lot. We do note that there are two neighbors that have written letters of concern. I just quickly wanted to address one of the neighbors' questions asking about tree preservation. The proposal will require the removal of 3 trees on the interior of the lot, but the many trees along Twindle and the trees at the back of the lot and the large tree in the center at the in the front of the lot will be protected and retained. So the vast majority of trees are going to be retained and protected during construction. There was another question that neighbor asked about, environmentally friendly, how environmentally friendly would the house be? Obviously, we're going to meet OBC requirements, and I did speak with the architect today. He said that there'll be a rough-in for an electric vehicle in the garage, so you can charge your electrical vehicle in the garage. There's going to be a way that the existing hot water that's being discharged from a shower or a dishwasher will help to heat the cold water in the house so that your water heater won't have to work as hard. There's a way to do that. And a couple of other small environmental features such as that. I note that there was some other objections about the lot coverage from another neighbor. Again, I think I've explained that. It has to do with the porches, not so much with the dwelling itself. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Beaumont. Are there any questions or items of clarification? Okay, I see none. If there's anyone standing by to speak to applications 105 of 2021 at 346 Willis Drive, please raise your hand and the Secretary Chair will invite you to speak. Is there anyone standing by, Ms. Secretary Treasurer?
I do see Mr. Ken Borg, but he didn't raise a hand. Also, I can promote him to panelist. I'm not sure if he wants to speak or not.
Okay, well, we have his letter. Okay, if there are no further comments or questions, we can take the matter into committee. Mr. Hardcastle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I lost my mouse here. Having undertaken my site visit, heard the information provided by the applicant as well as the information within the written staff report. I'm satisfied that the requested variances conform to the 4 tests of the Act. I think that there's been a sensitive adjustment to this site. This is a challenging site a corner lot, which are always challenging. Additional encumbrances being the trees along both the rear property line, what is now what would be deemed the rear property line, as well as the exterior side yard, and as well as the large tree within the front yard, and maintaining that separation. So I think that there have been excellent, some very good choices made in terms of protecting those key elements and defining character elements of the neighborhood and of this lot. So on that basis, I'll put forward a motion of approval, finding that the requested variances conform to the 4 tests of the Act. And the motion would be subject to 2 conditions, those being that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated August 26, 2021, and the elevation drawings dated July 13th, 2021, and that the approval expires within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued.
Very well, thank you. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you
Good
very
evening.
much.
Good
Thank
evening.
you.
Application CAV 120 of 2021, deferred from August 10th of 2021 at 328 Maple Avenue. Again, that's application CAV 120 of 2021, deferred from August 10th at 328 Maple Avenue. If anyone would like to speak to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call. Good evening, Mr. Capper.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. It's great to see you again this evening. I have prepared a presentation for you. I'd like to walk you through it.
Sorry, Mr. Capper, we can't hear you quite well. Can you just adjust
Sure. Sorry about that. I will, how about that? Is that better?
That's fine. Yeah, it's better.
Okay, my apologies. Madam Chair, I was just saying I have prepared a presentation for you this evening, and I'd like to walk you through it, only on the basis that the last time we were before you for this application, we did seek a deferral, and we've since had numerous meetings with staff, and we have, I believe, resolved their concerns, and certainly that's reflected in their positive staff comments this evening. If I could get the next slide, please. Madam Chair, the property's at 328 Maple Avenue is located on the south side of Maple Avenue, and it's approximately mid-block between Allen and Reynolds Street. Next slide, please. Madam Chair, what I've shown here is just a zoom in of that same air photo. And the reason I've included this is I wanted to show to the committee the existing building as it sits on the lot today, as well as what the existing coverage for that building is. So you'll note that in the bottom right-hand corner, I've shown a measurement of 38.3%, and that's the existing lot coverage for the building. Next slide, please. Madam Chair, in your package, you'll also see that, you should see that there are 2 letters of support, and those letters of support come from the property owners on either side of the subject property, and they're shown on the screen here in green dot. Next slide, please. So the variance before the committee this evening seeks variance for an increase in lot coverage. Under the RL3-10 special provision, there is an additional restriction beyond the parent provisions for lot coverage, and it restricts lot coverage to 19% for a 2-story dwelling. The proposal before you this evening seeks to increase that lot coverage percentage to 25.45%, which results in a 40.71 square meter increase, which is approximately 438 square feet. Next slide, please. Madam Chair, you'll note that in our planning justification report that was submitted with the application, there was an extensive lot coverage analysis that was done for all properties on Maple, as well as the surrounding block to the south, and I think we stretched up a little bit to the north. And this is sort of the findings, if you will, from that study. Within the study area, there was a sample size of 38 houses. And within those 38 houses, the sample size, which is above the proposed coverage, was 17, and the sample size below the proposed coverage was 21. And the reason I illustrate this point is that, I'd like to submit to the committee that the proposed lot coverage is very much in the average for the area. It's not the highest, it's not the lowest, pretty much right in the middle of what we observed in terms of lot coverages for the area. And there is the full data set in our planning justification report that you could review. If I could get the next slide, please. Madam Chair, this is the site plan that is before you this evening. You'll note that the existing building is shown on the property. And again, that's existing lot coverage of 38%. And you'll note that the proposed building footprint is quite a bit reduced in terms of its lot coverage. Next slide, please. Madam Chair, this is the proposed front elevation. And if I can get the next slide, it'll show the rear elevation. And the next two slides, if I may, show the easterly elevation and the westerly elevation. Madam Chair, before I move on to the next slide, I just want to let you know that we did work extensively with staff to revise the application. I think there may be about 7 different versions of the plans. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that. But I think we've got to the point now, obviously, where staff support the variances that are before you. This design exercise, I think, has created a building that is generally in keeping with what you can find in the surrounding area. And it's certainly within the context of the surrounding community, as well as being compatible with the surrounding community. So I do have a couple of slides that just show where the changes are made, where the changes have been made. I'm happy to walk the committee through that if they'd like. But other than that, I would conclude my presentation with these notes.
Madam Chair, you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Capper. Are there any questions or items of clarification of Mr. Capper at this time? Okay, I see none. Has anyone called in for this application, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, very well. Then we will take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Tlowski. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I don't know what's not to like about this application. The coverage is consistent with the neighborhood. It's actually a reduction from what's there, and the proposed dwellings far more in keeping with the character of the neighborhood than the existing house. So I'll be pleased to move approval of this application. Also note support from the community. I find this application meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act and would make it subject to development proceeding in general accordance with the site plan and elevation dated September 23rd, 2021 and September 21st, 2021 respectively, and that the building permit issues within 2 years.
Thank you, Mr. Tlowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Mr. Capper.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening.
You too. Application CAV 45 of 2021, deferred from April 6th, 2021 at 42 Burnett Street. Again, it's application CAV 45 of 2021 at 42 Burnett Street. Good evening, Mr. McNamee.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, and good evening, members of the committee. My name is Jarrett McNamee. I'm the owner of AJM's Designs, as well as the agent for the applicant and the owners at the homeowners at 42 Burnett requesting the variances. The owners purchased the property at 42 Burnett and are looking to build their new custom home, the new custom residence at this site based on the streetscape elevation. We've tried to limit the massing so that it appears to look like it's a story and a half from the street side. They'd like to construct a new dwelling and are currently seeking 2 variances. The first variance is for an increase, a minor increase in RFA from the permitted 42% to 46.71%. The variance number 2 is a minor increase of lot coverage from the permitted 35% to 36.98%. We've worked with the planning department and taken into consideration their comments to locate the dwelling on the property to ensure that we meet the 4 tests set out by the Planning Act. Planning is also in support of the application. We've also designed the house to fit within the community and the character of the neighborhood. And the owners have also met and discussed with their neighbors the new project ahead of this application and obtained 13 letters of support from the neighbors with no objections, to which were provided to the town. At this time, I welcome any questions or comments from the committee that they may have.
Any questions or items of clarification? Okay, I see none. Are there any, well, you have a ton of letters of support, so I doubt there's anyone here that would be calling to object, but just in case, is there anyone who has called that would like to speak to this application? Madam Secretary Treasurer?
No, Madam Chair, there's nobody.
Okay, very well. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Flemington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as noting that the town staff is in support of the application. Also noting that there are approximately 13 letters of support from the neighbors in the community for this application, and that there were no written or oral objections from the public. I am prepared to move a motion that the application be approved as applied for, finding that it does meet all 4 tests of the Planning Act. And I would like to include the following 2 conditions: that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated October 5th, 2021, and elevation drawings dated October 5th, 2021. And our standard condition that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision of a, from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Flemington. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Good evening, Mr. McNamee.
Thank you very much, members. Good night.
Right.
Okay. We have minutes for October the 26th to confirm. Mr. Flemington, thank you. And then a motion to adjourn. Mr. Hardcastle, thank you. Okay, we are adjourned at 9:09.